Father Sebastiaan. I'm the Impresario of the Endless Night Vampire Ball and Master Fangsmith of the Sabretooth Clan, which means I make these custom fangs.
Oh, wow. Smell for me. Oh, wow. Those are pretty cool, right, guys? All right, so, I've heard some things about you, read some things about you on the internet, and, I just have some questions, if you don't mind answering them for me.
No, that's why we're here at the Louvre, in the gardens of the Tuileries, watching a beautiful yoga class happening amongst the art and the trees.
Nice. Well, so my first question is, if you could just briefly explain to me, maybe the history of the Sabretooth Clan, or the history of, title use within your group and your organization.
We want to talk about titles. I guess titles in the vampire community, in Sabretooth Clan we have titles, but I'm going to get into that in a minute. But let's talk about titles in the vampire scene. The vampire scene has many different classifications, and a lot of people like to use the archetype of the vampire. Archetypes are a very important part of our culture, human culture. And archetypes are, you got your three base, the warrior, the lover, and the magician, that are common in Jungian psychology. And the vampire is its own archetype. It's this mystical, supernatural, magical, seductive hero. And this archetype is modern. This is not something that's a historical archetype of the vampire. It started really in the 19th century with Polidori's poem and short story.
And Dracula?
Well, Dracula came about 80 years later.
Okay.
Polidori was the same night that Mary Shelley wrote and came and conceived of Frankenstein. And then he wrote under Lord Byron the short story The Vampire, which really coined the modern vampire. That's the beginning of the modern vampire mythology. Then you had Varney the Vampire in the 1860s, who was a penny dreadful. And then the vampire plays in Paris in the 1820s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. And then the archetype of the vampire really was solidified with Dracula, what we know, and the Count and everything. So this noble, regal personality, a lot of people in the vampire culture relate to these titles. They want to have a title and then be somebody. And then, you had Dracula came out, then all the movies came out with the Count and all these different vampires. And then finally you had, later, you experienced, Vampire the Masquerade, a role-playing game where you had different clans of vampires, and you had the Prince of the City and all this stuff. So in the 90s, when Vampire the Masquerade came out, is when the vampire scene really got solidified. That's when the Sabretooth started, and the whole vampire scene really started taking shape. And a lot of the game Vampire the Masquerade was really embracing the whole vampire mythology. I mean, you had every type of clan of vampires. You had the warriors. All these archetypes got expanded upon. And what was really interesting is that a lot of people thought Vampire the Masquerade was a real lifestyle. They thought it was real. They thought that this game was just a fake way of, masquerading real vampires. I mean, Masquerade was vampires had to pretend to be humans and never tell anybody at None of the Blood that they were a vampire. So a lot of people around the world thought that vampires were real. And in New Orleans, for example, there was an entire court of vampires. The street kids were involved, and there was the prince of the vampires, and they organized. These homeless kids lived as vampires in the 95 to 97. And they used the terminology, the lexicon, all this stuff from Vampire the Masquerade. But Vampire Masquerade's a game designed to create intrigue between clans and cities and different vampire elders, and to make it a fun game.
Would you say you got inspiration for some of the titles from the Vampire Masquerade game?
Well, I think I saw the people using this stuff in life, and then I'm like, guys, let's get real. My girlfriend went to me one day. She was like, Luciana, and she looked me in the eye, and she pulled this rule book up, and she slapped it on the table and said, listen, I just want to live this lifestyle. I don't want to play a role-playing game as much. I'm role-playing, and I have my Luciana personality and my persona, but I don't want to do math to be in a nightclub. I want to get laid. I want to dress up. I want to be regal. I want to have nice dinners. I want to go on trips to Transylvania. I want to, and then I want to go beyond this. I want to really use psychology to create the vampire glamour, as you would say. And I was like, okay. And we didn't make it very long after that because I was still in the role-playing mindset of Vampire the Masquerade. And I realized that my Fang clients really are empowered. So I took what I saw the results of people playing Vampire, and then I removed all the rules, and I created the Sabretooth Clan. And a lot of people still had the mindset of the role-playing game, so they wanted titles like Elder and Ancient and all this stuff. And over the years, it just became like, come on, guys, you're not really an Ancient Vampire Elder. We're just trying to have fun and live a cool life. Luciana went on to found a company called Juicy Couture, and I'm really happy for her. She did great.
I love Juicy Couture.
Yeah, Juicy Couture.
Cool.
And so...
Well, then what would you say the titles in Sabretooth Clan are then? And, you know, what do they mean? What does it mean to have one?
Well, over the years, it's evolved into many different variations. Okay. Mm-hmm. Originally, it was how long you had your fangs, and the stone color on the Ankh represented your fang, how long. And originally, we had two stones. We had a red stone when you were a full member of the clan called a Kalme, or a brother or sister. Back then, we called it Sir or Madam. It was like being knighted almost. And then an elder had a purple stone. But it got out of hand. People took it too seriously. People were jockeying for position and feeling that they were control other people. And I've done many experiments on this, and I tried to weed away the role-playing game and make it a lifestyle, a philosophy, a culture, based on fangs and the experience of going out in the world and wearing your fangs. And that's what I do. I mean, that's Sabretooth. And it's always been that. And I got into all these mystical terms and everything like that. So about a year ago, after some lessons learned hard, I just said, I'm going back to the original structure, and I reinstated the stone color as the color of how long you've had your fangs.
All right, so there's no like real like titles like elder or...
Yeah, there's elders, but they're like, I had my fangs for 5 years. That's it. And that way so basically the structure of Sabretooth works like this. You get your fangs through the rite of transformation. You get a white stone. After a year and a day, you can move to a red stone, and then you're a brother or sister. So the white year, your white stones are fledglings. Red stones are brothers or sisters. They've been around for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Like big brother, big sister type of deal.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's family oriented. Sabretooth's a family. That's really what I propagate in Sabretooth. And then the second stone color is red for Soror, Frater, brother, sister in Latin. And then there's Elder, which means you've had your fangs more than 5 years. And then after 13 years, you get a black stone.
Is that what you have right there?
Yeah, because I've had my fangs for 13 years.
Oh, well, let's check that out. Yeah, cool.
And, you know, bringing it back to this where everybody's on the even playing field. The titles don't mean anything other than how long you've had your fangs. It's still a pride thing. People feel great about it, and they're actually more enthusiastic. Before, you got to earn your title with a whole bunch of tasks you got to do and everything like that, and it just created this big mess, and it was really like this hierarchy where people were feeling it just didn't work. We have a priesthood, which is a theater group that mimics and leads rituals and psychodrama and advises people on the culture and philosophy of the Fangs. And they have different titles in that, but those are actually jobs.
All right.
Okay.
So I guess like titles, like a priesthood, you know, that's more like a commitment, and, you know, it comes with obligations, duties,
Correct.
Responsibilities. All right.
When you join the priesthood, you're committing to helping the Sabretooth Clan culture be like a theater leader, a director, mm-hmm. Helping write books, translate things. And we have a couple roles within the priesthood. There's Deacons, who are people that help out the priesthood. Mm-hmm. Okay. Then there are Acolytes. And Acolytes are people that are committed to helping the priesthood do rituals, translations. They help lead rituals or help a priest lead rituals. And they're working on being ordained. It's a job, and it's a commitment, and it's not something to be taken not seriously, but also have a good time with it, you know?
So, well, if it's not to be taken like super duper seriously, like what would you say is the appropriate use within the Sabretooth Clan of your title?
My title?
Not yours.
Let me finish the titles in the priesthood.
Okay, yeah.
So you got the Deacons, you got the Acolytes, who are training to be priests. Deacons are like assistants. They're helping out. They're like deputies in the Wild West. Mm-hmm. Okay. Or they can be a permanent position. But there's a job. There's like an assignment. Like when a deacon or an acolyte there's expectations and duties and responsibilities. And then there's the priests who are ordained, who are can lead a group ritual, like theater pieces. And our ritual is psychodrama. It's not like supernatural or mystical. Okay, and then there's magisters, and magisters are the kind of like the super elders, the teachers. Magister means teacher. Okay, and it's a position. It's like, being the mayor or the president. And when you leave that title, you might be or professor in a university. When you leave that title, you might be emeritus, but you got to still be on the faculty to keep the title active. Okay, so a magister is more of like a master professor. It's more like Hogwarts or at a university. Not a headmaster. That's me. I'm the headmaster. Okay. So that's the hierarchy of the priesthood. But when you leave the priesthood, you give up your title, and you don't use your title publicly. Like inner court, or private community. That's not on Facebook or anything like that.
Right.
That's where you use your titles, and you use them discreetly, and it's a job. You don't go around all over Facebook and say I'm this or that. So.
Right, so is that kind of why you did away with like public titles?
Yeah, because people's egos are out their asses.
All right, so it's kind of like that. I don't know if the viewers knows, but about Emperor Norton. About that.
Emperor Norton's an interesting story because in San Francisco, I think he's Scottish or English. He moved there around 1840, and he lost his fortune. He had like $1 million today's money, and he lost it in a bad business deal. And he basically was broke, and he was sitting on the street, and he went a little crazy, and he declared himself Emperor of the United States. And he was such a good artist, he would make his own money. And he would draw on paper these really beautiful notes with Emperor Norton. And people took this art as a collector's item. He became like a local celebrity. But they didn't take him like he was really the emperor. They just entertained him that he was. And there's a lot of Emperor Nortons in the vampire community. And when he died, he came up with all these ideas how to improve San Francisco, like build a tunnel under the Bay Area, build a bridge to connect Oakland to San Francisco. They later became actual things that happened, but maybe he progenited or they were just common sense things to do. But Emperor Nortons are very common in the vampire community, especially outside the Sabretooth Clan.
Well, so what would you say is like the appropriate use of, if a Sabretooth had a title, what's like the appropriate use of said title?
Come up with a cool name that represents you, that's unique and people can remember, and like create a combination. Like in France, they have like a lot of French people use saints titles, like John Baptiste or Marie Claude or whatever. And you customize it. Go look in there's really awesome books like Llewellyn's Codex of Names, the Ancient Deities book that we use when we get Sabretooths. Look in mythology and ancient Hindu texts and ancient Egyptian, and come up with your unique own name. And don't put a title in it.
Don't name yourself like Lady whatever.
You can use Lady or whatever.
Lord whatever. Or
every person in the vampire community that really follows the archetype that we represent in Sabretooth, which is majestic and noble and chivalrous and romantic, should be our king or a queen or a lady or a lord.
But you don't need to put that in your name or your title.
No, it's old. It's obsolete. It was fun for a couple years when we were in Mother and nightclub in Long Black Veil in the 90s, but it got out of hand. People took advantage of it. And it's irrelevant now. The Sabretooth Clan is a leader. We're dedicated to moving forward. And anybody, we're all kings and queens of our own little realities, okay? And we have no need to flaunt this to the world. And it also looks like a role-playing game, like we're little kids playing something, playing house or princess. Sabretooth Clan takes life seriously, but we have a good time.
Well, speaking of playing house, so why do you call yourself Father? Is that a title?
Well, Father, when I started this, it became a brand. And if I went back now, I wouldn't call myself Father or anything like that. But it became my name. And I know it sounds contradictory to this interview, but I didn't want to be called Lord Sebastian or Master Sebastian. I just wanted to be a dad. I love family. I love culture. And when I make a pair of fangs, I feel like I make a beautiful person transform. into something more beautiful and more unique, and give that person an experience that will change their life and improve their lives and make them feel great, and make them laugh and cry and open up these gateways in their mind. And that's why I chose Father, because I thought it would be the right title. And I knew when I was 21, when I chose that name, it became a brand.
Mm-hmm.
The father of the vampire community.
Yeah, that's how I found just your business card that says Father Sebastiaan, for your Fang brand.
Yeah.
All right. And then I also heard something like, you mentioned like inner courts and outer courts. Like what is that?
See, I focus on my clients, the people that attend the Endless Night events and the people that buy my fangs. I'm not the master of the vampire community. I founded a lot of the things that I've been a major influence on the vampire community. Some people say I've founded the vampire community, which, depending on your perspective, I've helped it, okay? I've made my mistakes, I've done my great things, so, I think,
inner courts and outer courts.
Oh, inner courts. So what I did was, inner courts are basically private amongst my fan clients, because that family vibe gets reinforced there. It's like guys in the locker room or the theater group backstage, mm-hmm. in the dressing room, when you're working in a haunted house and you have all your actors together, or at the Ren Fair when you have all your actors together. It's a really important environment. It's a decompression chamber. It's also a place that we can be free in ourselves more. It's our night side. Mm-hmm. It's our vampire personality. It's inner court is not open to anybody but Sabretooths in good standing with the family who have their fangs and went through the rites of transformation. So everybody has something in common. Like our conclave is inner court.
Okay, so to be clear, like the whole like inner court, outer court, it's not some like weird secret mystic anything. It's just all the it's
got that vibe, but it's not like going hardcore.
Right. So the inner court is, like you said, the gathering of like the Sabretooths in their own private events and things. Yeah. And the outer court would be like like people that buy tickets for your events that go to your... Or
the public world.
Yeah.
Or the vampire community is the outer court.
Okay.
The online vampire community is the outer court of the Sabretooth world, because if they use our terminology like black swans and a lot of our culture ideas and things, because the Sabretooth is a culture that evolved from my Fang business. Mm-hmm. Endless Night is an event that celebrates that culture and brings people together, and also celebrates the vampire archetype. But there's many different perspectives on vampires. So the outer court is that public world that when you get 3 Sabretooths together, that becomes an inner court. When 2 Sabretooths are alone, that's an inner court.
Okay, very cool. Well, is there anything you want to add that maybe I didn't ask that you want to know?
Yeah. Remember, the vampire archetype is an incredibly powerful archetype. It has been in human culture for as long as humans have been around, just like ghosts or demons or whatever. But today we have our own modern interpretation of it. This modern mythos, the Sabretooth culture embraces. My Fang clients and I embrace. We love this culture. We have our own traditions. We have our own philosophy. We have our own perspective on things. We don't think we're invincible, immortal vampires that can turn into bats and shapeshift into wolves. It uses that metaphor to develop a philosophy of the empowering elements of the vampire philosophy. And when you wear fangs, you feel awesome. You look awesome. It's like having a magic trick. It's getting a connection to your primal nature. It's a sex toy. Vampires love to kiss. They like to make out. They're free. Men and women are completely and absolutely equal. There's no putting any gender down. And that culture evolved because of my passion for sharing this with my Fang clients and getting my Fang clients together. So I consider anybody that agrees with me on that, the empowering elements of the vampire mythology, to be a king or queen of the vampires. But in reality, I believe that there's only one queen at any time, or king at any time, and that is Anne Rice. And she is the modern incarnation of the vampire mythology and the modern woman who has brought the vampire mythology to the next level. Not Stephanie Myers, not Bram Stoker. Anne Rice is the queen of the vampires to me.
The queen of the damned?
Queen of the damned, exactly. So I leave you with that. There's one queen. I'm not the king of the vampires. People have tried to call me that for years, and I hate that title. However, it's when you do a lot for a community and you are controversial and you're ingrained in people's minds, be it me or Anne Rice, I love her, and she's my inspiration. She's my greatest muse after my mother. So to me, Anne Rice is my queen, and I will never think of anybody else. So.
Wow. All right. Well, hey, thanks for talking with
No problem.
me. Yeah. All right. So there you have it, guys. Title use and the brief history of the Sabretooth Clan with Father Sebastiaan.
Rock and roll.
Rock and roll.